Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sasha Parrish, and I am the project lead for culminating the top DEI insights from our founder and CEO, Pamela McIlvaine. On today's episode, Pam will be expanding on the best practices for college recruiting. Let's dive right in. Pam, thank you for being here. Would you please like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Sasha. I always enjoy this conversation with you. My name is Pam McIlvaine. I'm the CEO of Diversity MBA Media and the author of the Skinny on Diversity Recruiting, Best Practice Trends to Current Recruiting Strategies, a resource guide. You may be able to find the book at Pam McIlvaine, PamelaAMcIlvaine.com, or on Amazon. Please feel free to download this resource guide. It's full of information. So thank you, Sasha.
Thank you, Pam. So to start, I'd like to ask you, what are the current standard practices for college recruiting?
So, you say, well, I will say this. Standard basically is defined based on that company and that university. Each organization, or let me say, companies and organizations, I'll use those interchangeably, have their own practices in terms of how they approach college recruiting. And then colleges, unfortunately, they too have their own unique practices and standards as they approach wanting to have students present. But when you talk about, standards, what are some critical things that I would say that organizations should consider in terms of their college recruiting practices? One is that reducing colleges. In the past, organizations looked at everybody's relationship. Oh, Sasha, you graduated from, New York University, and Pam, you graduated from UC Berkeley. So let's get into that pipeline and only hire those students. Well, while referrals are great, we really need companies to hone in on what we call core colleges. And, it can be anywhere, depending on the size of your organization, from 5 to 25. But that's where you're really honing in to develop the kind of relationships with those universities and organizations that you need to have in place. Apologize here. That you need to have in place so that you can develop effectively the relationship. So that's one of the best practices that we're encouraging universities to do. And then on the campus side, we're encouraging organizations, the best practices we're encouraging companies to do is to have core schools, core colleges, minimize from 100 places, because at the end of the day, you only have so many recruiters, right? But then we're encouraging universities is to help the very specific organizations on campus, one for, disabilities, ROTC for veterans, BSU for Blacks, Alpha for campus, on the campus for Latinos, is to help those organizations create a program that will allow, or that they can attach to partnerships with companies that can, come in and see the talent, be able to be in front of them, or to partner with other organizations. We talk to career campuses all the time, the career centers, is to create a way where these organizations that are targeted, focus for companies that are interested in investing with them to align them so that they can begin to build, some substantial and proactive programming. The other thing I will call, you called it a standard, I consider it best practice, is that companies are actually assigning what we call dedicated recruiters to focus on targeted groups on campus as well. So most companies will have a university recruiting team or a campus recruiting team. And these recruiters are really designed to focus on developing the relationships so that they can have their pipeline to hire. Companies typically have, if you will, goals and targets for how many overall student hires they're going to make. students of color, by ethnicity, women, as well as, all even white Americans. They have their total campus hires. And so within that, they're very, very focused and targeted on the effort. So I hope that, shared some of the overall practices and processes a little bit high level anyway.
Absolutely. When looking at these focused campus recruiting methods, is there a direct correlation between these special programs and the diversity of new hires?
Well, for companies, you're asking that question from a company's lens.
Yes.
Absolutely. The whole intent for companies to have a partnership with campuses and universities is so that they can get in front of talent, so they can get in front of the students, be sophomores, um, juniors, and of course seniors of undergraduate programs, and then of course very specific to the graduate programs. But companies are looking to they want to have the kind of programming that's going to showcase the kind of careers that they have, so that students are aware of what they can do based on the specific disciplines they have. I think what's probably been most effective is where companies will host career fairs on their own campuses and then invite multiple universities to come. And they will have, many different departments show up within the company and then invite the surrounding universities, invitations to their organizations. They'll partner with the career centers and kind of say, hey, we like these disciplines to show up. And so that, and then sometimes they'll do the receptions with certain business schools, so they'll do the programming. Some companies will do resume shops. I mean, they'll do very specific programming, resume writing, interviewing skills. They'll set up mentoring alignment with disabilities on campus, LGBTQ on campus. So organizations are really trying to be intentional to help showcase. I don't think enough of it's done. I feel like there's a gap when students are, trying to decide what they want to do. They don't get the level of exposure I think they should. I think, career day in the classroom. I mean, like we did in high school. I know we're talking about college, but the reality, we have to understand they're just, a year or two removed from high school. So they're still going to be changing their minds. So if organizations really, particularly the jobs and careers that just are not celebrated. They're not recognized or even promoted. So students aren't aware. And so, for example, in the insurance industry, a lot of times people think about sales. Oh, I want to go insurance and sales. Well, insurance industry has an incredible, robust, and one of the most lucrative industries that you can be in, not just sales and marketing, but actuarial, we're math majors, economics, finance, all of these other human resource. There's so many other kind of opportunities for students to participate in. So yes, programming, I know programming is specific. I do believe programming really needs to be heavily strategic, even on the student side, more so on the student side, not just receptions and generally, but skill based, really having companies show up and say, what do you have that we're just not aware of? And where can we have consistency in creating that kind of programming, because it aligns to creating the pipeline for direct hires. At the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create pipelines for both their internship programs as well as as just filling their hires, and we know that typically best in class companies are converting about 60% of internships into full-time hires. So those numbers are pretty good. On average, companies convert about 30%, but for the most part, that's the number one um, process and method for hires for organizations.
Great. So, in all of your research, what have you found to be the most effective hiring platform or program for college students and for recent graduates?
That's a great question. So companies they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot of different things. They're definitely doing multidimensional things, particularly with AI. There and with what we call requisitions. So organizations have, HR, they have these requisitions that they need to fill. And filling these hiring requisitions, which are for positions that are open, they get thousands of them for one job. So they are leveraging AI to help them screen the skills they need. And of course, there are some barriers with AI, with the fact that it actually has some biased algorithms. So companies have to be careful and make sure they identify that. But the multi marketing process that organizations use for awareness. Of course, social media is number one. They're using all the platforms of social media to let students know where jobs are. Not so sure that many of them are on the phones yet. They're definitely downloadable, but companies are definitely trying to be more familiar and open. Um, in terms of how they do their branding and awareness. Companies are leveraging their diversity platforms as much as possible through advertising, through promotion, through podcasting, many ways to let people know that, hey, we're a diverse, friendly organization. And while they may not actively be demonstrating it, they definitely are in a place where they want to say, hey, we're progressing and we're leaning into the direction of being a lot more progressive with creating a diverse workforce. And that's really important, I know, for particularly the younger generation and, and even people that are moving from company to company and transitioning to different roles. They want to know that they're moving into an inclusive workplace. So the other kinds of, there's the Shabbats, there's website, making sure it's accessible for disabilities, that we're seeing enhancements into those things. Of course, of all the different social media platforms, gaming is becoming way more popular as we continue to see companies trying to find ways to engage students, to learn more about their organization so that the gaming process, it's more attractive to seeing the kind of jobs they have. So campus, and college recruiting, campus and or college recruiting as is becoming, it's just it's one source. Organizations, and I'm just gonna, before I wrap up, just say that organizations also are looking at specialty schools, they're looking at vocations, they're looking at apprenticeship. This is coming back. This was something that was very popular in the 80s and the 90s. It was huge with even in the university realm and the high school pipeline of development. These things are now coming back. We don't see it as much in the high school yet to come back, but where companies, I guess, where institutions have the funding is coming back, I definitely recommend that they partner with companies with apprenticeship programs for funding for resources. If they're superintendent of their municipality doesn't have those set asides for those kinds of vocational classes and programming. But companies are beginning to say, hey, everyone's not going for a degree. There's some that are highly skilled in other areas, and we want to be able to capture that talent. And so that's where I see we're going. I don't want to stop without mentioning BIPOC, Sasha, because that is not necessarily it's a new sexy name, but it's not necessarily a new trend, but it's definitely a new focus, not just in the underrepresented population of people, but also the underrepresented students. So, STEM is live and well, STREAM is live and well, all of, the things uniquely organizations are doing to increase their awareness. Mature companies are doing a way better job. I encourage new companies in the journey to look at some of the mature companies in the diversity space and take a lesson, if you will, and invest in what they have already demonstrated works well.
Thank you so much, Pam, for expanding on this topic and for introducing us to new information. As a recent college graduate, I was especially interested. To our listeners, please make sure to tune in next time as we go on to discuss how companies can build a diverse applicant pool.
Thank you, Sasha. Look forward to having you guys participate and hear from me next week.